Pete Oak, we're, okay,
We're live?
we're live.
Okay. And I will call this meeting to order. Good evening. I'm Jody Garzon, Chair of the Town of Millis Finance Committee. This is the meeting of Wednesday, April 29th. And with us are other members, Pete Berube, Sean Power, we have Jim Borgman, Katie Tu, Craig Schultz, and Kathy McGinnis. And tonight also joining us is Nate Maltinsky, and we have Nancy Gustafson and Terry Wiggin and Mark Conroy, all from the schools. And we also have Mike Gazinski and Carol Johnston, who will be sharing with us things having to do with the town budgets. So we will start off with talking to the Historical Commission and talking about the Community Preservation Act. Then we'll be hearing from the schools and about their budget for fiscal year 21. And then we will talk about other budgets concerning the town. And then we have some of our committee business. So I will hand it over to Nate to lead us through his budget request for the Historical Commission and the Community Preservation Act.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, everyone. This year for the Historical Commission, we have a level funded budget, and our budget is comes from the rent from the apartment on the back of the Elk Grove farmhouse, which the commission is under control and takes care of. So we receive $6,493 annually for our budget for the to run the commission. We've come under strain, particularly this year, since we have Niagara online. Our budget has diminished immensely because we are now taking care of the HVAC, electric, security for Niagara, along with the farmhouse and heating and electric for there. So I know the budget's going to be kind of tight this year. So I probably will defer next year for any increase in our budget. We're pretty much going to max out our budget, and that doesn't leave us any room to do any other historical purchases or events with the money that we have allocated for our budget so far. So that's pretty much it. Like right now, I have roughly $1,700 left in my budget, and that takes me through June. So that's where we stand right now.
All right, any questions?
Nate, this
Jody?
is Pete Berube. Go ahead.
No, I'm just making sure that people can hear me. I got on a little late. Thank you, Pete.
Yep, thank you, Kathy.
Okay.
Hi, neighbor.
Pete, go ahead.
Real quick, hey, Nate, can you just quickly describe the nature of the expenses at Niagara? Is it maintenance? Is it repair? Is it upkeep? Is it utilities? What is it?
It's heat and utilities basically, and we have a alarm system in there also, and we have actually we had the safety signal put some cameras in for security purposes and for alarm, and actually one of them is outside, which I let police chiefs of fire know that we have that available for any kind of problems that would arise. But basically, it's for the operation of the building.
Thank you.
All right. I think that's all we have for questions on that.
So you want me to go with the CPC?
Oh, let's go.
Okay. So our last meeting, I don't have the date, is 2 months ago. Everything flies by now, not having a standard schedule here. The committee met probably 2 months ago, and we did go over our warrant article for the upcoming town meeting. And we are planning to put $21,492 in historic resource reserve, community housing reserve, open space reserve, and then we will put in $80,000 into the budget reserve for this fiscal year 21. Our anticipated our administrative expenses are $10,746. We have a undesignated fund balance long-term debt principal of $25,000, and we have a undesignated fund balance long-term debt interest of $11,075. So these are for outstanding projects like the Veterans Memorial restoration, and I think the Dewey property on the corner of Orchard and Exchange Street was paid off last year. So and as far as the balance, our surcharge estimate for fiscal 21 is $192,635, and our state match will be a whopping $22,028. So more and more communities have gotten on to the CPC, and the money is generated from the Registry of Deeds. So that's where all the money comes from. So, but more and more communities have adopted the CPC, and so the amount that we get from the state is diminished. The most we've gotten, I think, is $38,000 over our. We've had CPC for 12 years now, 12 or 13 years.
And do we know how much we have in the various reserve slots?
See if I have it here. With me 1 second, sorry. I do not have that with me right now. It's one thing that we did realize is that the accounting for this is hand done. It's not in the computer system. So we are working. Wendy Berry is our treasurer and takes care of all the finances for the CPC. And she's working with Lisa and with our finance director to try to get things online. And they have to manually put together our report every time, which we just realized this spring that's happening. So I don't, Camille, we didn't have it the last meeting, so I don't have it, sorry.
Okay, I think it would be helpful to even just kind of have a balance of what are in those different funds, so that the town knows, what we have for resources in terms of, each one has its own stipulations as to how those funds can be spent in terms of historic resources, community housing, open space. But it would be helpful for the town to kind of have an accounting of where those funds stand at this point after 12 years of having the CPA funds. And I know you guys have done some really great projects, and certainly seeing Niagara in the center of town come back to life, it has been really helpful. But it'd be nice to be able to see those balances.
Actually, I just found them. Sorry.
Hey,
The longer I talk, the more things you'll find, you know?
Oh, so many papers. Look at all these papers. For open space, we have 89,000. This is as of December 31st, 2019.
Okay,
So, we have $89,365 for open space. Historic preservation, we have $57,974. Community housing, we have $107,686. And then our undesignated budget reserve is $80,000, which comes to a total of $334,925.
that's helpful to know, particularly as we move forward as a town and are, looking at projects in the future. It's good to know what we have in those different buckets, and as other town departments may have projects that they know of that they can bring to your attention.
Right, and with the new town website and whatnot, I think it'd be a good idea that we have a separate page that we can list our current numbers. A lot of other towns have a specific site or page that have the CPC that they can show all their current numbers and projects. So that's something I'm going to work with Karen and whoever's all in charge of having those numbers and pages available.
That sounds great. Other questions?
So we have one project in discussion right now for some field maintenance. We have a meeting scheduled for May 14th, which will be via Zoom also. We may or may not get it on for the town meeting coming up. It'd be a committee decision, but there's a lot of information that's not there for us right now. So that's the only other project that we have in the pipeline right now.
Okay.
Which field is that, Nate?
It'd be for the town fields.
Okay, all of them?
Yes, for the park, some field maintenance, some fencing, a whole list of things. But some committee members were not at the last meeting, plus the information that the applicant had was not complete. And they only had one bid at the time, one complete bid, and it's for a substantial amount of money. So we tabled it until the 14th.
So how much is it?
Roughly 150,000.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
So Lauren had some questions that she wanted answered, and Dave Baker had a few also, and they were. Dave was intricate in part of the initial fields appropriation for funding and whatnot, and so we're everyone will be available on the 14th, so it'd be a good move for us all to get together at that time.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions for Nate? All right. Thanks for updating us. We'll let you know if any questions arise. Deirdre will reach out.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. All right. Next up, we have the school department to go over their budget request for fiscal year 21.
All right, great. Thanks, Jody. And thanks everybody for logging in and checking in tonight. Hope everybody is doing well and adjusting to the new normal life. Before Nancy starts the presentation, I just wanted to give a quick little bit of overview of how we approach this. Based on the tri-board meetings we had over the summer and through the start of the fall, and also consistent with what the last time I came and spoke to you guys as we were determining the type of formula, we are presenting a budget that comes to a 4% growth from an operating perspective. This is not so it's a level service budget that comes in at 4%. It's not that there aren't additional needs, and Nancy actually has a couple of slides that she'll talk through a couple of the top critical ones, but given the state of the budget and unknown of state revenue, we're not going to go through the whole laundry list. But what we've done this year is, instead of asking for an amount greater than 4% and then seeing where it comes in, we're taking that approach that we had all discussed of targeting a 4% growth, and we'd go from there. So with that, I will let Nancy start. She there? Nancy's on mute. Let me text her.
Can I unmute her?
Can she unmute herself, or does?
I apologize. I now can share my screen now that the microphone's on. I did it in the reverse order. Okay. So hopefully you can hear me as well as see the slides. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you. I want to first of all thank everybody. It's of course been an extraordinary spring, and the town of Millis is really extraordinary, and I think as I go through this presentation, there will be several things that I will note that put the schools in a very good place for meeting the challenge that is in front of us right now. So we're, just a little update, we're feeding 70 families a day. People can still join in on that, and we want to make sure that anybody in need who has somebody under the age of 21 gets the resources they need and have food security. So our budget development process is the same as usual, except the ending date is a little uncertain. And for those of you who are new to FinCom, this might be new information. For those of you who have been on FinCom for a number of years, I apologize that some of the information will be the same. But we start in December, January, put together our fixed costs, some estimates, our needs. We had our public hearing on the budget at our last school committee meeting. We work with Finance Committee and the Select Board to develop, put warrants on the town meeting warrant. And then this year, the final budget will be voted on June 29th, I believe. School committee will approve a final budget amount in June. This year, a few more things are up in the air than normal. But the premises that we use to develop our budget are the same. First and foremost, our mission is to meet the needs of students. And we are very targeted and focused in our goals and align our revenue to our priorities. We endeavor, of course, to not only maintain but improve the quality of education in Millis that we provide for our students. We are always looking to identify strengths as well as opportunities for improvement and some efficiencies that we can make. Staffing is the number one determiner of a quality education in Millis, and I think we've done an excellent job in our hiring over the years. But we also need to be very proactive now in retaining and attracting students. So those are our budget development premises. As you may or may not know, we are all about and have been all about personalizing learning in Millis for quite a few years and focusing on strong relationships. That is the rock solid foundation that makes Millis a special place, and it's what is paying off in dividends for helping everybody get through a difficult situation with remote learning and school closure. Those strong relationships that staff forge with students, that staff forge with families, the support we receive from families and the town are absolutely essential. We try to provide exemplary programs. We have many of our programs are nationally recognized. The Tools of the Mind program in preschool kindergarten, to name one, the Spanish immersion program, of course. And also we have, for many, many years, infused engineering throughout the elementary curriculum for a focus on 21st century skills, problem solving, critical thinking, and we connect that with the literature that kids are reading. And it's been a very powerful program. We, as part of our personalizing of learning, kids ideally have basically an individualized, personalized learning path, so that we're meeting kids where they are and taking them as far as they can go. Our priorities to maximize well-being and learning, of course. Well-being, the SEL, social emotional learning, is absolutely a foundational component that we focus on. We screen kids 3 times a year for being at risk in any social, emotional, behavioral ways, and really do, I think, a phenomenal job in taking care of the social, emotional, mental health aspects of our students. And that has been the increase in the needs in that area have grown over the years. We focus on student engagement and agency, having students become owners of their learning and responsible at a young age. Even in kindergarten, it's wonderful to see of taking responsibility for being very active agents of their learning. I mentioned the 21st century skill focus. One of the things we've really tried to beef up is our real world authentic learning, so to speak. We have a STEAM Scholars program, STEAM being science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. Those are the areas where research shows us that there will be the most jobs in the future. So we have STEAM Scholars, we have Global Scholars. The Global Scholars program focuses on international and very robust learning to prepare kids for a global economy. And of course, we must do that all with maintaining and providing good facilities. The obvious thing is that we have this gorgeous new building that really supports the mission, that all of those speak to all of those bullet points. The new building, the new elementary building, is just phenomenal in terms of what it provides for opportunities for teachers to do all 4 of those bullet points. Our challenges, of course, in addition to dealing with the COVID-19 situation, this will probably affect Chapter 70 funding. It remains to be seen, but even without COVID-19, for years we've had pretty much flat Chapter 70 funding, because we've received the 20 or 25, maybe this past year, $30 per pupil increase that goes to the town. And with lower enrollment, which is the other challenge because of the birth rates in town dropping during the recession, And at that time, maybe due to the recession, not a lot of opportunity in housing for new housing at the time for young families to move into town. So our enrollment is lower. I'll show you a graph on that in a minute. And our funding is tied to enrollment from the state. The social, emotional, and mental health issues I mentioned, that is the area that is hitting every district the hardest for special education. Across the state, Massachusetts being one of the top state in the nation in many, many ways, but we're able to deal with what used to be typical learning disabilities, dyslexia, things like that. But those aren't the challenge as much anymore as the social, emotional, mental health issues that we're grappling with. But we're doing some really innovative things in that area. As you heard Nate talk about, there's a wonderful proposal to address the athletic fields. There are inadequate athletic and recreational fields in Millis, but and we share with the town. The town, the town park is highly utilized by everybody and the schools, and it's wonderful that there's a proposal to address some of that going forward. As you may know, there were other proposals that have been brought forward and some feasibility studies done on providing a track. Our kids don't have track, but we have kids who are state champions in the mile, even without a track. But so a track and a football stadium and a turf field there would really help, because on artificial turf, then it can be utilized by lots and lots of teams all day, all evening. Enrollment, this is the trend. You can see we have about 300 fewer students than we did 10 years ago. And that is a trend that will slowly reverse, but it will be slow. We do have housing developments in town that should help that, and we're actually optimistic that the new elementary building will also attract young families to town. I think it's already beginning to reverse a little bit. A nice thing about low enrollment is class sizes are quite low, except for the grade 5. And an added bonus for low class sizes is if we have to go return to school in the fall with still maintaining social distancing, we'll, dividing a class in half then is, yields us about 10 or 12 students. So all of that is being talked about and planned for. There are a lot of guidelines coming down from the state in the future, but we're beginning that planning already. As you know, class sizes are one of the ways in which we can personalize learning much better. So one of the things we depend on is for salary, for some of our salaries is school choice. And school choice has risen greatly over the past, let's see, this chart shows 13, 14 years, from 31 to what, 90 something. It's behind my 80. 91 as a high and 81 this current year. School choice outgoing. As you know, school choice is a factor that also affects the town. If we have many students choicing out of Millis, it affects the revenue coming in from the state. So we've been able to reduce it a little bit. It's stayed pretty steady over the last 10 years, and it's less than, it's about 40% of what our school choice in. So the school choice students coming in, I should have noted on that slide, the 81 students coming in are sprinkled throughout the grades. We have, I think it's 8 in our senior class, or 12 between junior and senior class. We do have about 20 kids who will be graduating, and so we will need to replenish them. They come in sprinkled throughout the grades, though, so it does not require hiring of new staff. Our charter school enrollment has remained low, with only 4 students, thankfully, going to charter, because that is also a revenue hit. And private and homeschool, it's risen a little bit. I believe more kids are being looking at private schools as an option now that the economy has rebounded and families can afford that. But this does not affect our revenue, other than missing out on the per pupil expenditure that we get from the state in Chapter 70. The Tri-County and Norfolk Aggie vocational schools, though, have increased greatly over the past, you can see, 5 years. And there are a couple of reasons we believe. We believe, one, that we were artificially low prior to this compared to surrounding districts. So our numbers were quite low, which was good. But also the vocational schools have improved and are also starting to offer programming that is targeted at a college-bound student versus just a vocational student who wanted to go into the trades and might not be going to college. So they are offering, Tri-County offers an engineering program, computer science. They have AP, advanced placement classes. So they've started targeting an audience for membership to try to recruit students that are now college bound. And I'll talk, there are several ways, actually, we've taken a 3-pronged approach to this. The one, we've surveyed and called every single family that chooses to go elsewhere and not stay at Millis High School. And from that, we've discovered there are 2 main reasons. One reason that families choose to go to a vocational school is because they want a vocational education and they want more hands-on, real-world, authentic learning. So that's what I'll speak to, how we've started, or how we've been addressing that. And then the other thing is that because Millis is so small, students sometimes want or need a change in their social group. And Tri-County and Norfolk Aggie provide that for them if they want or need a different social experience, or it's not going well, or they've outgrown it, or for whatever reason they want a social change. So we've done several things to develop our programming around, I mentioned the STEAM scholars and the global scholars. We have an engineering course, which is very hands-on and very authentic in how it's taught, targeting real-world experiences. We have AP computer science, advanced placement computer science. We have work to career experiences, and we're growing our career focus for job visits, job site visits, mini internships. We're doing that on a very low shoestring budget right now of only a $5,000 stipend for a career coordinator, but we'd like to expand that. And then you'll see as one of our main things we'd like to add this year is starting a DECA program. And DECA is a international competition with a business and entrepreneurship focus. It includes marketing. And if we could get even just one course in that at the high school, then both my kids in another high school, I have a freshman and a senior, they've both been involved for 4 years in the DECA program. It's a phenomenal experience. It gives kids a wonderful grounding in business, in finance, and entrepreneurship. So that's something we'd like to add. So we gathered information, we've developed programming, we've tried different things to address the social aspect, started advisories at the middle school level. We have had advisory groups at the high school level for years, but it's now extended down to the middle school. We try to provide a even more diverse variety of clubs so that kids can explore different interests and meet up with kids with maybe they've been involved in athletics, which 80% of our kids are, and they need to or want to expand to a different set of friends through a different avenue, such as our gaming group, a club that works after school, meets after school. So that's another way we've done that. We've connected high school classes with middle school classes so that middle school students have much more fundamental understanding of what high school is like. Our third grade students do chemistry over at the high school, and that's been wonderful. Our seventh grade science teacher has paired up with the high school science classes, and the high school kids come down and help teach some of the science. We have a Big Sisters program, high school kids meeting with younger females in the middle school, and we're starting up a Big Brothers kind of male leadership group. So those are some of the things we've tried to address to retain and connect our students, let them know that Millis High School is an extremely strong option. It's once again been named this year to the top percent of, I think it's 7-8% of high schools in the nation. We provide, for example, next year for the first time, we'll have advanced placement psychology as an option. So we keep expanding our offerings, and some part of it is just marketing. We need to communicate the strengths of the high school to our middle school families and kids, because it is a superb high school. Our per pupil expenditures, you can see Millis, our per pupil, for those of you who have seen these charts for a number of years, we used to be further on the left of these graphs, and it's not that our per pupil expenditure has gone up, but it's mostly because we have fewer students to divide that revenue by. So low class sizes and fewer students means it looks like all of a sudden we have a great per pupil expenditure, but it hasn't been, it really, we've done a lot with the budget and providing quality programming, but so per pupil now looks pretty average, close to the state average. These are our comparable districts, sometimes called the DART districts. If you go on the Department of Ed website, you can do a lot of analysis of looking at different schools that are similar demographically to Millis and are small size. So we are ahead of some of those in our average per pupil expenditure, again, mostly impacted by fewer students. This is, there's not much difference between these. We do analyze whether our out-of-district tuitions are having an impact compared to other districts, and they really aren't. It's very similar. the percent of low-income families in Millis, students, this changed a while ago with the census, how they did the census, and we're about at 11%. So you can see the range. Medfield, Westwood are about 5%, on up to other small districts like Lunenburg and West Boylston and Douglas have more families with financial need. So over the years, when we've had to make reductions in our budget, we've targeted expenses so that we could prioritize that strong staffing that I mentioned. And from the past 8 years, we've had about an 16% decline in our expenses. And then in 16 and 17, we had to make some staffing reductions. And then again in 19, we reduced it. We were able to reduce it from expenses again. Our total budget, as you can see, is very salary heavy. Almost 84% of our expenses go to our staff, but that is not unusual, and it's typical of other districts, and I think it's why Millis provides the wonderful education it does. Of those salaries, teachers are 70% approximately. We have some other categories that are small, administration about 9%, and interventionists, paraprofessionals, and tutors, that's about 5%. So for last year, our base budget was $15,856,664. And as Mark said, this year we engaged in a process where we tried to get to 4%. So in order, a 4% overall increase. In doing so, you see here the COLA in our contracts adds $245,000. The steps are what teachers and paraprofessionals and bus drivers and custodians go up a step each year until they max out at whatever the top step in their particular contract is. So steps are for experience. And then the lanes are for teachers. Teachers are required by the state to get a master's degree. We can hire them with a bachelor's degree, and then they have 5 years plus a 5-year extension to get a master's degree. And then our contract provides incentives for them to gain a lane change at master's plus 15 more graduate credits, or 30 or 45. So the lane changes basically would have been about 120,000. And in order to get to a 4%, we know that even though teachers had put in for a lane change, that about 50% of those will actually make the lane change in any given fiscal year. So we went ahead and reduced that number to about 62,000, because we've done the analysis and we know over time that about 50% will make that. So that is one of our reductions we've already made. We had hoped, you see in there $100,000, about $101,000 number. We had hoped to reduce our reliance on choice for paying salaries. Each year, we have more salaries coming out of choice funds than we take in. So over time, the cushion we had in choice has been reduced. We had hoped to bring a couple of salaries back into the foundational budget at $100,000, about $101,000. The choice is ideally for equipment. Could be a skid steer tractor. It could be technology. It could be curriculum and instructional materials that could be furniture, the things we tend to put on a town warrant because we don't have, we can't utilize our choice dollars for it because it's all going to salaries. Whoops, pardon me. We are proposing a transition program. A transition program is a special education program for 18 to 22-year-olds, students who generally are not capable of living on their own, but we have a life skills and work skills program for them, and we are required to educate them until they turn 22. So normally those students are going out of district and it's been costing us about $150,000 for those students. We are collaborating with the town of Medfield, the school district, to create our own transition program, bringing something that would have been tuition going out the door and creating our own program. Medfield's ideal because they have the space. We have a van program. Our vans are available for that to take the kids to a job site or something that, is part of their programming with the ideal goal of them becoming independent citizens able to live on their own. So it is a cost savings of about $32,000 because if we were paying another program, out-of-district program for it, it would cost more than bringing it in and collaborating with Medfield on it. And then the next thing is we do have an increase to a speech and language therapist because of the increased caseload at Clyde Brown School for speech services. We do have one retiree this year with a hiring savings of about $40,000. So our salaries, once we reduced the lanes by 50%, came in at almost $720,000 increase at 4.54%. However, we were able, because of some special education savings in out-of-district tuitions, and last year we were able to prepay tuitions. This year, again, we should be able to prepay tuitions. We are able to bring our expenses down by $85,000. And so that brings us to a level 4% increase in FY21 for $16,490,931. As Mark mentioned in his introduction, we do have some things that we believe are essential for to be a truly high-performing district. And we have these 6-7 bullet items in place, and the research shows they are essential for providing a really excellent level of education. So we have two things that are really addressing core needs that we need that are above the 4%. One being an increase to the bridge program. We have this past year we started a bridge program with a 0.65 counselor, school adjustment counselor. And this is, to increase this is essential because this program addresses students with mental health or school resistance or concussions. It could be just a physical thing. My own daughter as a senior had a terrible concussion and it was awful. The school didn't have a bridge program, and entering after a significant concussion is really a challenge for kids. And the bridge program is a small room in our high school with where kids can go and transition back for either health reasons like a concussion or mental health concerns. And it really is a program that is pays for itself in cost prevention, because if we didn't have this type of program, many of these kids might end up in out-of-district placements for mental health reasons. And we'd like to expand it down to grade 8. It currently has been highly successful. So there's an offset of with about $11,000 needed to expand it down to grade 8. And then we do also have more and more students coming in needing English language services, learning academic English and needing the services from a specialized English language teacher to allow them access to the curriculum. Currently, we have 29 students. When I started in Millis, I think we had 2. In some years, there were very few. So it's been a growing population. The only there are 2 more pages of needs, and these are all needed. I have to say, some of them are addressing things we've had to cut in the past. For example, professional development funds we cut many years ago. We haven't been able to restore those. School adjustment, the curriculum materials. These are real needs, but our number 1 priority in this list is that DECA program, the business entrepreneurship program that we think will pay for itself, because vocational schools get over $18,000 for their funding for each student. And if we retain just 1 student because of our business program, this could pay for itself. 1 or 1.5, because we get about 11, almost vocational schools get a lot more to educate kids than we do. So this is a program that we think will have a huge impact and benefit the town as well as the schools. So there are 5 or 6 things on this page, and additional needs: reading specialist, providing options for more engineering in the middle school. Summer tiers. It'll be very interesting. We will need to invest some money in addressing students' needs who didn't do well during remote learning. Our teachers are doing an amazing job, and most kids are very engaged in learning, but there are a few who will have some gaps that we'll need to address. And ideally, we can start addressing them in the summer, but we'll definitely need to see where they are in the fall if we're able to come back and beef up our intervention for those students. One kind of creative idea, we'd love to put a maker space, outdoor learning space at the middle high school in the courtyard. So there's an area that's surrounded, that's a beautiful outdoor space. And Clyde Brown has several outdoor learning spaces, and we'd like to make that possible so kids can they could be involved in building it with, donations of some materials from local contractors or whatever. They could design it, they could build it. We could have a lot of cool stuff going on, and space is still at a premium at the middle high school. So using the courtyard as an outdoor learning space would be, I think, a really cool thing. So, as you know, we ask each year for what we call the must fund warrants, the bus lease at $89,900. If we we'll need to adjust what we do and how we transport kids in the fall, perhaps, but we'll leave those discussions for another day. The Medicaid administration funds a little bit of the support, but the staff in the schools do a tremendous amount of work trying to get Medicaid reimbursement for services that are eligible. And this brings in close to $40,000. We're hoping it goes up, although the rules have changed and it's more stringent now. And then our computer lease. Our computer lease this year will fund the replacement of the high school lab, the computer lab. It's 7 years old, which is a couple years beyond what we had hoped. Ideally 5 years would be the time to replacement, but it is 7 years old and we need to replace the high school lab. And in addition to that, there are some other devices, laptops and iPads that are built in. So we understand that free cash is limited this year, but we have put forth the need for curriculum and instruction materials. We're in the midst of a literacy study at the Clyde Brown School because we're not happy with our grade 3 reading and grade 5 reading English language arts scores on MCAS, and are embarked upon an intensive study of with a consultant of what needs to be addressed there. The curriculum and instruction materials would help that. We've been able to replace all the middle school lockers, and now we'd like to move on to replacing high school lockers, and we'd like to continue the movement to replace furniture so that it's a more mobile, flexible classroom environment. And the skid steer tractor is essential for the amount of plowing that's needed with the new elementary building. It's got a lot of sidewalks and a lot of space that this year we lucked out. We didn't have to plow a lot. We didn't have a lot of snow. So in conclusion, we think we're very proud of what we've been able to do in Millis, and we're thankful and grateful for the support. For example, the computer warrant that gets funded every year. We were in good shape. We were able to provide over 100 devices to students at home and a few hotspots for families that didn't have internet service, high-speed internet. And the fact that over the years we've had a very blended environment with a lot of technology infusion. Our teachers did not miss a beat, and our students didn't skip a beat for remote learning. It really has been gone remarkably well considering the short amount of time we had to develop it, but it really wasn't a sea change. People had been personalizing using that technology that gets supported by the town, and we appreciate that very much. Any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Already here. I want to say, first off, I'd like to say thank you for all the efforts you've gone through. Excellent presentation, a lot of information, very clear. And I want to also thank you for all the efforts you've done for all the homeschooling, because I know that you've had an awful lot of challenges trying to get kids in this town educated in a very unusual way. I do have a question though. I mean, I know that it's a small town. We have a small population. A lot of kids go off to vocational schools. That's understandable. Other students they leave the school system and go to private schools. I guess I have a couple questions. Why are they going off to private schools rather than staying within Millis, other than the fact that the socialization, when you've got a class size of 70 and you've grown up with them, it's almost like you're sick of your brother and your sister. And I understand that. But we've got to be able to retain our kids and be able to keep them here so that they're not going off to other schools. And I understand that we have to spend the money regardless of how many students. You have to spend the money on the teachers and all the education factors. I understand all that. A long time ago, we had talked about regionalization. That was when my children were young. Has that been revisited? Have we spoken to Medfield? Have we spoken to Medway? We've spoken to surrounding towns to see that maybe we could regionalize so that the expenditures are not so great.
Actually, yes. The answer is yes. And regionalization in the early years is more costly because when you regionalize, you have, for example, our teacher salaries might be different from Medway's or Medfield's, and nobody will agree to go down, bring their contracted salaries down. So costs actually go up in the first few years of regionalization. What we do to reduce costs, especially at the high school level, is offer a lot of virtual opportunities through the virtual high school. And we get free courses also through a consortium, the Tech Collaborative. And so that provides our Millis students with a lot more options than they would have just with our Millis teachers. But we have an amazing array. In a traditional high school, if you were a biology teacher, you'd teach five sections of biology. But our teachers teach not only biology, but in environmental science and probably two other courses. So they're all teaching and prepping for a lot more courses than they normally would at a large high school. So they do a phenomenal job in our course. Mark Conroy actually did an analysis of our course selection is much better than a lot of private schools. And we're able to provide a lot, even though we're small. So we do every year call every family, ask them to submit a survey to reach out to see why they are choosing a different school, a private school perhaps. And for the private schools, some of them it was, I went to a private school. I want my kids to go to a private high school. Some of it is athletic facilities and we've heard that from a few families. So, but we do take it seriously and analyze it and try to get to the root of it and try to be very responsive in what we've done over the years to provide more of what kids and families are looking for.
One other question. I know the vocational schools, obviously, you can tell, I'm of years. I grew up where there was home ec and there was shop and there were all these other, a lot of the courses that are now offered at a much more minimal, but are offered at TriCap. Is there any possibility of implementing any of those courses or are they being offered that might entice students to stay within the system rather than losing them? And why are other students from other towns? Who are those students? Where are they coming from that are the school choice?
Well, the school choice kids come from predominantly the surrounding towns, but not all. Some of them travel quite a ways, and they come for different reasons. Some are attracted to a specific program like Spanish immersion, but they don't necessarily get in. They have to enter as a kindergarten student and join the lottery then. Some of them, to be honest, I think the most common answer to why people choice to Millis is because of our culture and the the sense of community, that small school, big family sense that, and the culture that we've so carefully built over the years of having the extra love and care and connection that a small community like Millis can do. And that's very much an integral part of what teachers do. So I spoke at length to what we've done to develop the programs. And I think, Tri-County as engineering, we started an engineering course. I think the last, we had a year where the teacher got training, and it's been in place this past year and been highly successful. The AP, the computer science, that we've beefed up those offerings. The AP Psych, advanced placement psychology, will be good. It's not necessarily vocational, but a lot of interest in that. And then the main one we're banking on, so to speak, is the DECA Business Entrepreneurship course. If we can offer that, I know it'll pay for itself.
And if I can just add as well, it's for the pure vocational academics, the pure vocational studies, the general public schools are not allowed by law to compete in that. So we can't add plumbing or electrical or any of the historical trades, yeah. Even though the historical vocational schools can, as Nancy noted, and have expanded into what has been traditionally college prep tracks. And I think the other thing, just as it speaks directly to Tri-County and funding and the ability to add programs, in the last 3 years, that over the last 3 years, the cost that we've paid per student to go to Tri-County has gone up 38% in 3 years. Wow. So almost 13% a year, they're allowed to increase what they charge the town of Millis per student. Our budget, the school operating budget, has gone up roughly 4% every year. Mm-hmm. So, and our state aid has gone up 1% a year. That's come into Millis. So it's tough. It's tough to be able to kind of ramp up the programs, competing with them when they have resources that are growing exponentially compared to what we're able to do. We're focused on it. The programs Nancy mentioned we're working on them, and we're trying to identify. We've done the surveys of parents of students who go out, and whether it's just because you don't necessarily want to say everything, most of the responses we get are purely my students either looking for the true vocational education, or they're looking for a bigger school, and right. Tri-County is much bigger than Millis. So
one last thing then, because of what Nancy mentioned about how the school choice students that are coming to this town, and that they like the small town, the environment.
Yeah.
Can we market that so that we can get more school choice students here? I mean, is there a marketing program? I mean, I think that at this point, our school has to look at it as a business, and maybe we need to start looking a little bit more outside the box and to try and get more and more students to come here, maybe by advertising and marketing, just what Nancy said.
Yeah, I mean, we've started that over the last 2 years. Actually, I call it competing for our own kids. So, right. Working in the middle school, predominantly kids leave either from 8th to 9th grade, so they leave after 8th grade, or they leave after 6th grade. And those are the two big jumps. And so what the high school principal and the guidance counselors and the middle school staff have started doing is reaching out to parents and students, in end of 7th grade, early in 8th grade, to really give them a sense of the offerings that they have at the high school, so we can try and keep kids. To branch that beyond, to start kind of an advertising campaign, I think if we had financial resources to start advertising externally, that's probably not where we're going to shift dollars right now, but that would take an investment to do that. But we are definitely working to try and compete to keep our own kids first, to see if we can focus on that.
Okay. We do endeavor, like every month, one of my administrators is in charge of trying to get an article in the Millis Medway News. And what's interesting, I talked to that superintendent in Medway, and they have a firm that they pay to get articles in the press. So they pay a firm to do that, and we try to do it internally because we don't have the funding to pay somebody else to try to market us.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Other
Madam Chair?
questions? Yes, go ahead, Pete.
Hopefully I've got a couple quick ones here. First off, Nancy, congratulations on your retirement.
Oh, thank you. Bittersweet. I don't know.
Sure it is.
I'll cry.
We are not happy, just to be clear.
I concur. Real quick, a couple of things that you said that I hope you can clarify for me is you said something about prepaying salaries in 21, and I'm curious as to what would have happened to those funds if you did not use that money to pay for FY21 expenses. And then I have a follow-on question.
Yeah, it's not actually salaries, it's tuitions that we're able to pay. So we, especially for our collaborative programs, students with severe special needs who we do not have a program for, might be a deaf student, a blind student, might be a student with such severe mental health challenges that they're not able to be successful in our school programs, even though we have over the years started what are called sub-separate programs in each of our schools to reach pain students. But those students who go to a private or a collaborative school, the collaboratives being the Accept Collaborative and Tech Collaboratives are the two we belong to, and it's a consortium, and they run programs for those specialized students or students with special needs that are beyond what we can serve. And those are the tuitions by law we are allowed to prepay. So when we had a couple of years ago end of year savings from several small areas in the budget, that's how we utilize those end of year funds, is to prepay the tuitions for the next coming year for the kids we know that will be staying in those programs.
Is it safe to assume that if you're not able to do that next year, that the funds that you're using to add on to your budget for 21 would then be unbudgeted?
So we have something called circuit breaker as well. And circuit breaker is when there are extraordinary expenses in special education costs beyond, I think it's 3 times foundation, is it, Terry?
Yes.
So when our foundation amount is around 11,000. So when it's 3 times that, and a residential school, for example, could be over $100,000. So anything that's 3 times our foundational amount, we apply to the state and get a reimbursement. Ideally, if the state funds can cover it, and get a reimbursement in circuit breaker. So that's part of a little bit of a cushion as well, because we'll get those some funds, but they then just get applied to the budget again. So to answer your question, I think if if there comes a year where it's really tight and we have no money to prepay tuitions, we'd have to show that. We would know it, though. We would know it, and we'd then have to add it to our base budget the following year.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead, Terry.
If I can add to that, I think what you're seeing, because the prepays are typically coming out of savings and tuition, Peter, is that what would happen on the, if you will, on the downside, is that we would have a case either move into the district or a case that would develop where we would have to send a child out of district that we did not anticipate.
Yeah.
And that would be the situation that would be created where, in another year, a future year, we would be coming and saying, that prepay that last year was 133,000. Well, it's evaporated, and the reason it's evaporated is because we had an increase in the tuitions that were unbudgeted.
Okay. Thank you. And if I may, Madam Chair, one more.
Yes.
There was a slide that said something to the effect of Clyde Brown, tiers support for reading and math, 40,000 K requested, and that was because you moved fifth grade students back to CFB. Can you just expound on that a little bit? Why do we need to spend another 40K for students that exist? They're just in a different building.
That is because at our middle school level, we don't have any tiers interventionists. So a tiers interventionist, the tiers of support are for kids that have not yet mastered something and need a little more time or support, and they would meet in a small group. Used to be called the Title I program because the Title I funding would support it. Last year we lost 60,000 of the federal Title I funding, so that's part of it. But basically, the tiers are small group teachers who meet with small groups of students to address any deficits they have, to make sure they're reading on grade level, reading it, as we mentioned, we're also looking at our reading program. It could also be in math that kids might need a little more time or support. So middle school didn't have any interventionists at all. What they had instead was a double block of English and math, and in 5th and 6th grades. And so when 5th grade moved back, it added about 100 kids, but we didn't have any personnel to shift from the middle school to Clyde Brown. So in an ideal world, we'd add to that an interventionist that would, but we understand, this probably won't be the year we get to do it, even though the need might be greater, because the achievement gaps are going to be perhaps greater than they would be if we weren't in school, if we were in school.
Thank you.
And Nancy's 100% correct. 2 years ago, that would have been funded by Title I. That money's gone away.
Thank you. That's it.
Other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much, members of the...
I'm sorry, Kathy McKinnis here.
Okay, go ahead, Kathy.
I was on mute. Sorry, there's a Madam Superintendent Kathy McKinnis here. Great letter and great presentation. I got to tell you, when I was on the selectmen, I knew nothing about this. I'm glad I have an opportunity. Just like when I saw that there was 22% of the budget is for special needs.
Yeah.
I think the town should know that, because things are changing now, and I think the old timers in Millis need to see what English as a first language, and we need those classes for the kids. And it doesn't seem like my one question is about school choice. Are you bringing in more money for school choice than now is outgoing, Madam Superintendent?
Yes, much more.
Okay.
And I can give you the exact amounts I'm turning in my budget book, but we have 81.
It's roughly it's roughly $250,000 a year more coming in than goes out.
Okay. Because it's 81 kids coming in and only 34, 35 going out.
So the 81 that are coming in, the money that comes in from them funds them? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah,
We're not paying to have kids come in.
no, because the money we get, we don't allow, so there's limits to class sizes and grade levels. So we wouldn't allow school choice to come into a grade if it was going to require us to hire an additional teacher just to serve that population. And therefore, the kids that are coming in are really helping offset the salaries that would be paid regardless of whether they were here or not.
Right. I'm just curious, how many first grade classes do you have for Spanish immersion now, Mark?
This one.
There's only one.
It's still the one?
Yep, hasn't expanded.
It's 25% of our kids, Kathy. It used to be 20% because we used to have about 5 first grades. And now we're down to 4 first grade classes everywhere except, 5th grade is the only larger class.
Right, I saw that. And thank you for feeding the 7 families a day, too. I learned that from you, and I appreciate that.
70,
yes.
yeah, okay, good. Well, and
Thanks a lot.
we keep outreach more and more to try to, send emails, phone calls, et cetera, to get more families coming in because it actually helps us. The more families we feed, we will get federal reimbursement for those meals. So we have the people producing, able to produce the meals and provide them. We just keep marketing that so that we can help families and get the reimbursement also.
Good point. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Sure. I have a quick question as well. So I understand from your presentation, the amount that we pay for the vocational schools is more than it actually costs us to educate those students in Millis
Correct.
per student.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, we've
I
seen
think
those
it's
costs
over
soar.
18,000 per pupil.
Right, so that's about $2,000 more than what it actually costs to educate them
Correct.
down.
Right, and the way that process works is the Tri-County, and it's not just Tri-County, that just happens to be our school.
Right.
They're allowed to set their budgets and disseminate that budget and assessment to their member towns without, as opposed to regional schools like a King Philip or other regional schools who may have to, if they needed something above 2.5%, that they would need to get towns to agree via override vote to a higher value. The vocational schools don't have to do that.
So I think as you've pointed out, it's a real inequity in the way that the system is set up, that, Millis as a town, can do its darndest to keep its per pupil costs down, but we have no control over the amount of money that goes out per pupil for the vocational schools, or very limited control over that.
Right.
The vocational schools also have something called excess and deficiencies, which you would know on the town side is free cash.
Right, and I don't begrudge vocational schools, and I think they do a great service for their students. I begrudge that we're sent a bill without a lot of control over that. So
Yep.
I think that's something to highlight here for folks who, whenever they have the ear of a legislator, to bend it a bit on that point and see if we can't get some relief on that side, because that's the only place it's going to come from.
Right. Yep.
Other questions before we let our school friends go? All right, thank you so much. And if we have any questions, we'll pass them along.
Okay,
Thanks, Jody.
Thank
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda, we have a discussion of the fiscal year 21 budget requests for the finance departments, the assessors, finance and treasurer, IT administration, employee benefits, general insurance, and debt service. So Carol Johnston will be sharing that with us.
Thank you, Jody. Did everybody receive the spreadsheets that I sent out to Deirdre? If she could,
Yes.
if everybody has them, otherwise I'll ask her if she could put them up on the screen for us.
They're on the town website from the link that I sent yesterday. They all have,
Yep.
they're on the meeting
They all
materials.
have-
Yep.
All right, great. So I'll go through the assessors first.
Let's see if that works.
That's not the one that we're going over the individual departments and not the select board.
Okay. So let me find the.
Which one will it be starting with? Because I've got all of them up on my screen.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start with the assessors. It's the same as what you were given in your packet originally back in February. There haven't been any changes to that. On the assessors group, the increase in the salary line is due to the SEIU contract for the clerical salary. We were able this year to, our old assessor retired in November, and we were fortunate enough to get a very seasoned professional from Hopedale who was doing an outstanding job, and her salary's actually a little bit less than what we would have been paying our seasoned assessor who retired. So that's the increase in the salary line. On the expense line, there's an increase for map updating. That needs to be added because when we do the maps for the town of Millis, the new buildings are not put on the map automatically. It costs $15 per building to have them added to the map. So that's the increase in cost for the mapping. We'd asked if the building department would increase their fees for to add that $15, but we were told no, they wouldn't do that for us. So we have to incorporate them anyway into the assessor budget. The other line item that's going up are the meetings. We anticipate having a few more meetings this year that we'll send the assessor off to, as well as the clerk that's there, and a little bit of increase in mileage. So those are the increases for the assessing department. Does anybody have any questions on that? So I'll go over to the finance director accounting. On that, it's the same as what was given to you back in February as well. The increase in the salary line is the SEIU contract, as well as my increase for my salary for the coming year based on my contract. The expense line we've held to last year's level, so that the only increase in the finance director accounting group is the salary increase. The next group is the treasurer. Again, that's the same as you given back in February. The increase this year, in the salary line again is the SEIU contract. Again, because the higher level positions, the higher salaries, it's the multiplier effect plus the step increase. So that's why you see the large increase year over year for total salary, but it's all SEIU contract driven. And there's a small increase in the expenses for the treasurer. That's the tax title. $3,400 was added for $3,800. Sorry, for the tax title attorney that we need to have. That's about 20 hours a year for $185 an hour. So that was the increase this year. Any questions on that? The next one I have is the IT. IT administration, that did change from when I'm reading the proposed piece of it. That did change from when you received it back in February. We've eliminated the IT director position of the $50,000. We decided we actually tried to recruit the position and were successful. We had an excellent candidate. However, he refused the position. He was going to take it as an add-on to his current job, but his current employer asked him not to do that. So at this point, we back to the drawing board, and we decided that it was probably better for us to go with a new firm that's going to provide our help desk. And then we added a consulting line for $20,000 because they will. We can have somebody on an hourly rate come out if we need them to. We have a small increase in the software maintenance for the coming year, and that has to do with our switching to a different provider for support for the IT group here. We'll be having two providers instead of the one that we had. So we'll see an increase there. And then the school is going to help offset some of the new munis expense. They have a savings of from switching from their old RDA system, which was costing them $8,000 a year, coming over to our munis system. It was a significant increase to bring that group on, and so they're going to pick up $14,500 of that cost. So the IT costs that were reduced in that area for that reason.
Madam Chairman, may I ask a question, please, on IT?
Sure.
There's a thumbs up. I think that counts. Okay. First, I guess my question is, was this paid for out of free cash last year when we voted the $50,000 on an emergency basis? Because we definitely thought we needed it.
Right. So we'll be using, we haven't used those funds as of yet, but we would use those funds to help us in the consulting end for next year.
Or put them towards free cash to be allocated, yeah. So I guess my only comment is this was a black swan event. We needed something that was critically important, that we took budgets out of sequence. We didn't consider it in the normal sequence of budgets to add the $50,000 position. And now we're realizing we didn't really need it and it wasn't really an emergency, or we can't find the person. Maybe it's not rising to the level that we took it as a once in a, out of sequence event is what it really became for us, because it was so critically important. And we asked if there were consultants or other firms that could be used. And the answer was no, we won't be able to find anybody. We really need to spend this money that wasn't budgeted. We went out on a limb. We spent money we didn't really have to do it. We allocated it, out of free cash with no idea how to make it go in the future. And now we don't need it. There was another way to do it. There was another solution that was, that was asked about and dismissed when we did this back in the fall. So I guess that's my comment. I understand you couldn't find anybody for the salary, but.
Well, but unfortunately what we're doing is we're using two town volunteers rather intensely in the last few weeks. And so they're actually they've been outstanding, except for they're getting tired.
Oh, and that's why I was 100% in favor of this $50,000 position back then, even though it was out of the norm, it was out of the, and I know that people ask, could we hire more consultants? Is there a way to do it cheaper? And the answer was no, there wasn't, and now there is. And that's,
the consultant, this is just a stopgap until we can actually get somebody. I think what we want to do is do this for a year, reevaluate it at the end of the year. We did want to reach out to the school to see if we could end up with some sort of a shared resource with the IT group. That's a secret. That hasn't happened as of yet, but it doesn't mean it won't happen in the future. We really do need the IT support. I think that anybody who's working remotely that works for the town hall can attest to, if we hadn't had the type of support we have from our two Millis volunteers to get this remote desktops in place well before anybody thought of a coronavirus situation, that we wouldn't have been able to keep this place up and going with the shutdown that we have.
And I'm not saying anything against the 2 volunteers that are doing it. I'm saying that's even more reason why I think we need the full-time staff that I was a proponent of back in the fall when it was a out-of-sequence critical issue, and now it's not. You know?
But the thing that you're not hearing is it is still a critical hire, but in order for us to fill it at this point in time, we don't have a person, but we do have, and both volunteers have been vetting these organizations for us to get the IT support that we need, and feel that at this point in time that this is the way for us to go. We still can rely on our volunteers, and that's unfortunately what we'll have to do, but this is a stopgap measure.
And Madam Chair, may I add a
Yes.
comment here? I do appreciate the comments. I think that, as the finance director has said, there were complications in trying to bring a qualified person on for a part-time position, and we knew that was a risk. And I would agree that this is really a stopgap measure to get us through another year. And we also took into account that we're entering a time of some revenue uncertainties, and the thought of adding another person to the payroll was something we decided, in light of everything going on, that we would hold off one more year in consultation with the folks that are assisting us, and that we would use these funds as a stopgap measure for a year and get by through one more budget year until the smoke clears on the difficulties that we're all going through right now. So I wouldn't say the issue is put to rest. I would say that, we have a solution that is workable for a year, but that I would expect that we'll be revisiting this with the Finance Committee starting next winter.
Okay, thanks.
The alternative is if you have an outstanding qualified candidate that can take that position, we would love it, and we would reverse it back up to the salary line. But
Yeah, I think we're coming into a buyer's market for people with those skills right now. So I've got a couple friends who are no longer being able to do that same job. Young, but they're young guys, but they're good. Yeah.
Well, have them send us the
They're on the
resume.
South Shore, unfortunately.
That won't work.
No.
But thank you for thinking of us.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. Okay. The next item up is employee benefits. The requests are the same, at $5,470,514. The items that are significant are the health insurance has gone up to $3,109,023 from $2,930,000. The other item which goes up every year is the Norfolk County retirement. That's gone up to $1,964,883 from $1,818,303. So those are principally the big drivers in this. Those are the items that, health insurance is based on the number of FTE that you have that are benefit eligible, that are taking the benefit. So, and the retirement is based on employees that you have in your system. So.
And is there a standard amount that is paid per employee within the town system, or is it contractual based on position or union, or how is that calculated?
On which one?
For health insurance. For health insurance.
For health insurance, it's based on so it's a 70-30 split with the town.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's based on what the individual, because we have GIC insurance.
Okay.
We did try to go with the employee. We asked the unions this year if they wanted to change from the GIC, because we had till December to let them know. Otherwise, we're locked into an additional 2 year with GIC. The unions all voted that down. So we're with the GIC, and within the GIC program, it offers various insurance carriers. And of course, depending on the plan that you pick and whether you're individual or you're a family, there's a considerable difference. And so it's all based on employee preference of what they've selected in the plans.
So the town doesn't have as much control over it, because if you're part of the GIC, then it's whatever plans are available to employees, presumably statewide, who are part of towns that are part of that whole system.
Madam, if I could interject a little bit here.
Sure.
So I would say that, as a member of the GIC, those rates are fixed by the state and controlled by them. The town does have some independent say. The town could choose, in conjunction with the employees of the town, to leave the GIC. We have an opportunity to do that every 2 years. And it is something we're going to take a serious look at for the next round to see what types of savings would be available at that time. We think there is a possibility of some significant savings to the town, so we're going to take an even closer look at that. A year from this December, so in December of 2021, we'd have to give notice to the GIC of whether or not the town is going to continue to be a member. But in the lead up to that, we'll need to have discussions with the select board and the different employee groups and collective bargaining groups within the community to go through a process to make that change. But it's something we're going to be taking a close look at as we get into the next 2-year cycle of the GIC. So that's something we can look at for possible implementation in FY23.
Okay.
Any other questions on the employee benefits? The next item is the general insurance. The general insurance this year is the total budget's $541,944. That's an increase from the last year's adopted of $475,000. Big increases in this area are in the general insurance. It's gone up to $223,376 from $161,500. That's based on the valuation of the property and our performance rate. The next item that's gone up significantly is the police accident and fire accident. We took the current rate that is actually being paid this year is $80,000. We budgeted $76,000, and Maya has told us that will be going up an additional 4% next year. So we're expecting to pay $84,000 for the police and $84,000 for the fire department accident insurance.
And the general insurance is like property liability insurance, or?
Right. It is your property casualty and your professional.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
just to expand upon that slightly, the general insurance, as you see, it is quite a bit of an increase there. A couple different factors beyond the 4% increase roll into that, and that is the fact that we have, as of in the last 3 or 4 years, have added some considerable new structures to the town. Those have not all been updated with it. I mean, we're covered for them, but that has not been updated within the premium calculation of our insurer. So they are over a 3-year period adding those in to our premium. So that is part of the increase in the general insurance, is the fact that we do have some brand new and improved structures in the community coming on board or already here that need to be properly insured.
Okay.
Any other questions on insurance? My last item up for me is the debt service. The debt service will be going down from last year's. The total debt service for principal and interest is for FY 2021 is $3,893,523.38. That's down from last year's $4,618,915.42. The biggest contributor to that would be the interest coming down for the Clyde Brown School. In 2020, the interest was $1.5 million for that project, and for 21, it's going to be $969,250 for the interest on the project. Any questions on that?
Down is good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because 19 to 20 was rough.
Exactly.
It's so silent, everybody's shocked.
I don't think we want to graph it. That might.
I'm hitting mute here because I'm jumping. Okay, sorry. Carol. What's next? She's all done?
I'm all done.
Okay.
Is himself up?
Let's see.
Myself and I am up, I believe. Madam Chair, I think I have the next budgets to discuss with the Finance Committee. That would be for the Executive Office, Select Board, Town Buildings, and Town Council.
Have at it.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll go through each budget and then see if there are any questions on the different items. Just to keep people from falling asleep here, I'm going to just keep to the items that there's been any change to. So I will start with the personnel services. There are 3 positions within the department. 3 of those 4 adjustments are contractual. The other one is the salary department head. That is the operations support manager, and that merely reflects a step. The select board has not voted on a COLA yet for non-union, non-contractual employees. I expect that will happen within a few weeks. So that one number will need to be updated once that's done. That is all the changes on the personnel services. The expenses, just to note the changes in expenses of any consequence. Our telephone went up by $2,200. That's based on the new phone system that's gone in at the municipal center, as well as some of the cell phone costs. So that's gone up to $17,200. There's been a couple reductions, or based on my recommendation, reductions to advertising and postage, reduction of $1,000. Meetings, since we expect there to be less in-person meetings next year, that's been reduced by $1,000. And consulting services, that was reduced by $4,000. Those services were through Clifton, Arson Allen, Hannah York that we had working with us. That's no longer going to be needed there, but we kept a $1,000 line item just in case we have any small consulting items that need to be addressed next year. So that's a total departmental budget of $375,400. I'll be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have on that first budget. Okay, the next one is town buildings. You see on the proposal there is a drop in wages. We do have a vacancy right now in one of our facility manager positions. And in reviewing the operations of the maintenance of the buildings with the operations support manager, I am recommending that position, one of those positions be eliminated, and that be taken up. That would be the maintenance of the library, the fire and police station be handled by an outside contractor. That would result in a net savings in front of over $10,000, as well as the benefits associated with an employee. I am in conversations with the union in regards to that, and so that is still yet to be fully finalized, but I anticipate that's the path we're going to go. So those are really all the changes to that budget. So that budget is actually decreased down to $294,962. Any questions on town buildings? I believe the last one I have is legal.
I do have a question on that real quick.
Looked like you were getting ready to unmute.
Sorry. Slow on the draw. Mike, are you briefing off the spreadsheet we got in February or a spreadsheet? Because I show it going up by 50 grand.
One I have is April 27th.
Okay. I'll talk to Deirdre offline. I wasn't on that distro, so I'll get a copy of that. Thank you.
Yes, that definitely has been adjusted in the last couple of weeks. So the last
It's on
one
the meeting materials that she just posted.
Yeah, there's been a number of changes in the past few weeks. So the last one I have is legal. I've been keeping close track of the legal costs, and I think we are on target to be right at about $90,000 this year for legal costs, and I am requesting the same amount for next year.
Let's hope.
And just to, for those who may not know, the legal costs are basically made up of our retainer with Mead, Talum, and Costa of $6,000 per month, and the remaining $18,000 is for labor counsel and other special counsel. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay.
May I ask a general question, Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Could someone just explain to me, who knows how much money's coming in with people if they're able to pay their real estate taxes and everything, and I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but if to fund the budget as requested, and if there's not enough money coming in, where do we make up the difference? Doesn't make sense, does it?
Well, if we have and will, we have been asked by the select board to produce a budget with a 5% reduction in state aid and local receipts, and then an additional reduction of 10% for state aid and 10% in local receipts. So we will be getting those budgets together for the select board. In the event that either of those items happen, we'll already have a plan in place and be able to execute it at that time.
Okay. Before
right now,
the budgets are voted on?
Well, right now, we don't have any indication that state aid is going to be impacted or that our local receipts will be. So once we have, if we get closer to the June before town meeting, if we have that knowledge, we will change the budget at that point. We will put forward what we know to be true at the time.
So I'm curious. I mean, it could be confidential or not, but are the selectmen or anyone hearing from taxpayers that this quarter of payment in real estate taxes, some of them, both people in the family, both there's no money coming in, and I've heard people say, well, paying my real estate taxes are going to be down to the bottom of my list because of other more important things. So what happens when all of a sudden there could be a 20% or so drop in it's a what if scenario, but conceivably could be a what could happen as well, Mr. Kaczynski.
Well, certainly something we're going to be keeping good track of. I do that. Unfortunately, we have to move forward in a snapshot in time, which is never ideal. So therefore, we have to keep a close watch not only on the real estate tax collection, but also local receipts, new growth, any changes in local aid by the state. Obviously, those are factors that are actually being discussed not just at the state level, but at the federal level.
Yes.
And so I think for this, we have to do that every year, but for this coming year, we have to be, I think, extremely vigilant of those factors moving forward. And if we find out in July or August or September that these revenues have to be adjusted downward dramatically, I would expect that either at the November meeting or even a special town meeting before that, there would have to be an adjustment to those budgets. But again, there's really too many unknowns right now, and that's part of what the finance director has indicated with the 5 and 10% cuts that we hope don't need to come to pass, but we think it's prudent to go through those exercises to be prepared should those extreme measures need to be taken. That has been communicated to all the department heads, and we'll be working on that. So, and I had touched base with your chair earlier today that the select board will be meeting on May 8th, I believe. It's tentatively scheduled right now to discuss budgets, and again on May 11th, with the thought that I'd be coming to your meeting with some members of the select board on the 13th, if you're meeting that night, to discuss our view on the revenue situation as well as the recommended budget proposal. So, but I think, it's a point well taken in that we are in a time of revenue uncertainty that we have to keep special watch on factors far beyond the borders of Millis.
Madam Chairman?
Yes,
On the same topic. It's more of a cash flow situation, though, isn't it? Because eventually, if you don't pay your tax bills, there's a lien placed on your house, and eventually that money comes in. So really, we're talking a cash flow situation, not a...
Well, it could come in years from now when you sell your house.
Right. Yeah.
That's basically correct. The event, those funds will be paid, but it also could be several years before they're paid.
Right.
So there could be a cash flow problem. Although, we're going to keep a watch on that. If you're asking me, my biggest concern right now, my biggest concern is state aid.
State aid,
And, what happens, on Beacon Hill in regards to how they're going to deal with their revenue shortfalls should the federal government fail to step up and, in my opinion, do the right thing and support the local services that have been trying to keep the public safe in this time. So we're going to keep a look at all those factors and provide regular updates as to, the revenue and our projected revenue. So we're trying to prepare for every contingency without making unnecessary cuts that are going to have long-term detrimental effects upon the community and the operation of its services.
Well, it seems like local receipts will also be impacted, although Millis doesn't have a booming commercial base, so maybe not as much as, say, in Rentham. But still, with having, many of our stores closed or limited hours, I would anticipate that those receipts would be down as well.
And Madam Chair, just even a small thing as a meals tax.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Right.
Well, that's so the two items that would be in flux in the local receipts are the motor vehicle. People won't be buying cars, so the motor vehicle will be less. And then meals tax. We don't get a huge amount of money in the town from meals tax, but every little bit is right.
That's right.
So that's why we're taking the position that 5% of local receipts reduction and a 5% of state aid. So between that, those two areas, we should be able to cover what we think the shortfall might be.
I know I've read somewhere that some towns are considering 3-month budgets from July 1st on to just get them through until they know more after this?
Well, I think that the guidance came out from the DOR that in the event that you aren't able to hold a town meeting before the July 1st budget, then the Board of Select Board would have to submit to the Director of the Bureau of Accounts a 1/12 budget to be approved and have to submit it each month until you were able to have a town meeting for them to vote on your budget. So that's something that's provisional. It's out there, but we're hoping to be able to get the June 29th town meeting done, and we won't have to worry about that. But that is a plan that we'll put in place.
Right. And also, if I may, Madam Chair, I mean, certainly it's a good point. As I mentioned earlier, we are, still moving forward with an annual budget for a year. However, it could easily turn into a 3 or 4 month budget if revenues drop off and we need to have a special town meeting to make adjustments. So there's always that possibility. We're in uncertain times, so we are trying to keep a close eye on all those factors. So I think we have to look to this year as it's really that the budget as a process of creating and maintaining that budget will continue on at least into November until the dust clears. And then if there are shortfalls, the town will have to make decisions on how to handle that for the remainder of the fiscal year. And then if there's a reset needed for FY22 based on, any long-term changes in revenue, we'll have to make those adjustments.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Pete.
I hate to be kind of the doomsday guy, but the pessimist in me says that 5 to 10% reduction planning is not extreme. And if you look around what's happening in terms of public layoffs and municipal layoffs across the country, and we're kind of, basically like the third most impacted state by COVID, and sales tax is down and income tax is down, that 5 to 10% is probably the best case scenario, not the most likely scenario, and not the worst case scenario. And so I guess my general comment is that we probably ought to expand our aperture on terms of what are the possible impacts. I know you can't predict, Mike, so I'm not trying to be critical of you, but to me, I just have to say that 5 to 10% sounds like the tip of the iceberg.
I concur. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the concern. I don't pretend to have a crystal ball to know how this is all going to play out as far as, like I mentioned, with any federal stimulus funds or how the state is going to handle the situation. I would consider a 10% cut to be fairly catastrophic to the town and the school's operations. What I would say is if we did have to do something like that, we would try hard to minimize the impact, but to the services to the citizens, but it would still result in a change of services that would be very clearly seen by the public. So we're certainly hopeful we don't have to make that extreme change, but we'll be prepared to do so if necessary.
Yeah, my thought is 5 to 10% is probably, having been through the 2008 issue when it came up.
Oh, this is different though.
Well, it's still an economic downturn is what we're talking about. And I think that if you look at the numbers, a 10% drop in state aid is $600 and something thousand. 10% on local receipts is $200 and something $1,000. I mean, if you get much more beyond 10%, you're not talking town government like you know it now. You're talking a shell of the government. You maintain police, you maintain fire, you maintain schools, and everything else is off the table. Is what's going to.
Well, we don't really have to talk about it. It's not.
I don't think we need to go down the path of thinking beyond 10% right now, because that's
no, it is
reinvention of government. But I think that it's a good plan to do the 5 and 10%, as Mike's talked about.
Yeah.
If it's beyond 5 or 10%, it's in a catastrophic league of cuts.
Yep. So, as Mr. Gazinski said, he reached out to say if we were okay with pushing the select board to join us at our May 13th, I believe it is, meeting, which I said, yes, that's fine. Let's give them some time to think through and discuss their budget priorities and to work through some of these issues, and then they can work with us on that in that meeting rather than push them to be ready next week. So, so we have that plan in place. You'll see in the meeting materials that there's also a revenue summary and the FY21 operating budget as well. So those are the updated budget that's as of 2 days ago. So definitely take a look at those when you have a chance. So we can, start thinking through some of these things, although we're still waiting on various other pieces to kind of fall into place as well on this, and we're still dealing with a lot of uncertainty.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I could just on this revenue summary, I see, county assessments and MBTA assessments. If the economy downturns, would those be lowered at all, or are we stuck with those prices regardless of what's happening?
It will depend on what the state comes back to us. They may increase those expenses because those are directly from the state. So we're just kind of in a holding pattern. We're hoping that by having, a 5% reduction, a 10% reduction, those plans in place, that if it comes to that, we can have a smooth transition to whatever we need to do versus having no plan.
So those assessments could conceivably go up, Carol?
You don't know if they have to make up revenue somewhere, right?
Somewhere.
So those are expenses that go back to the state.
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh.
All right. Any other information that we need to know from Carol or Mr. Gizabinski?
Madam Chair, the only thing I would add is just, I know that the committee has received the budget, my preliminary budget recommendation dated April 27th. Obviously, that is just from me. That's not from the select board. And I'll be, as I mentioned, I'll be meeting with them on the twice before your meeting on the 13th. And so we're hoping to refine the numbers and to be able to add the select board stamp to that if possible by your meeting on the 13th. So just be aware that those numbers still could be tweaked now.
Yes, thank you. But it's helpful to see it in that format. We're getting there, and then we'll continue to rely on you to get us to a more refined spot. All right. Can everyone who's not on mute themselves unless you're talking?
This is loaded in, but so continuing forward.
Hello? Lauren, can you mute your microphone, please?
I think Deirdre might take her off hold or off mute.
She muted it, so there you go. It's hard when you're on a phone, I know. It can be difficult. All right, so I think we are at the point that we can review our minutes of our last meeting.
I move, you made me mute myself, and I tried to make a motion. I move that we approve the minutes as written.
All right, someone needs to unmute themselves a second. All right, Jim seconded it. All right.
Really well. It's like that.
Craig,
Well, I
I'm
don't
watching
like
you
the-
play with your beard, and it's like hypnotizing me.
I haven't had one since I was 27, so.
Oh, boy. All right, it's been moved and
It's very
seconded.
thoughtful, you can think.
Yeah.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes from our April 15th meeting. Do we have any discussion on that?
Nice job, Dee.
Thanks.
Yes. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining?
Abstaining.
All All right, so Sean is abstaining.
Pete abstains.
And Pete. All right, motion carries. Thank you. Do we have any new business that we need to discuss? I usually rely on Deirdre at this point.
Right, so will we schedule the next meeting for the 13th, or would you like to hold one next week? What do you
So let me open that up for discussion. I was thinking if we don't have any presenters, to wait until the 13th. Is there anyone who would like for us to meet next week to go over, some of the things that we've received?
Right next to the share button.
All right.
I don't know if it would make sense to, discuss the budget that we got from Mike prior to the selectmen coming in, or just wait for their final review. I don't know how much it's going to change, but it might give us a chance to at least discuss amongst ourselves a little bit. Yeah, it could be a short meeting too. There's nothing wrong with that.
I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah.
I think my schedule next week is much better than this week.
Mine's horrible almost every night this next couple of weeks. We're doing week-to-week budgeting, so.
Yeah.
I'm just nervous that all of a sudden there's going to be and I know this is maybe for discussion at a future time, but what if we approve a budget that brings on those couple of policemen that have been added, the few folks at the school and everything, and then you find out a couple months later that the money's not there for them? Are they going to start taking out of the town stabilization fund? I didn't know whether that was appropriate.
Yeah, I think that realistically, stabilization is one option. The stimulus money, if it comes in, because they did that last time to the tune of $1 million to the school, which the school then didn't take any of the town money because in the federal guidelines in 2008, none of the money was available for the town of Millis, was available for the school. So the school didn't take any of their 65, or took 200,000 of their 65% split. Yeah, the new cash took very little, none of it, and the rest of it went to the municipal side. So it was so I think there's a lot of things, and I think we just don't know what they're going to be. It could be that.
Do we use the sorry, Craig? Is the stabilization fund used to just pay a budget, or was it more for extraordinary circumstances?
It's supposed to be for extraordinary, but it could be. I mean, COVID-19 is extraordinary.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so
Okay,
it's something that would be low on my list, but it wouldn't be the last thing on my list. The last thing on my list would be the devastating side of the cuts that have to occur, know? So it's not my first choice by any stretch to use stabilization, but I easily foresee a chance, especially with the money we've gotten in from the marijuana sales and taxes that we aren't able to spend yet. There's money sitting in our bank account. But that's our next meeting. We can discuss all of that. So.
Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking. Let's have a discussion of the revenue as it's currently projected and the operating budget for 21 as it stands now for our meeting next week. And that'll be the main budget item unless anything comes up that, anyone's requesting a transfer or something. Do we have other folks that we're waiting to hear from, Deirdre?
I'm chatting with Loring. So can you see the chat here on the right hand or whatever? Yeah, the right hand side.
Well, I made it disappear.
So it's saying the town has posted an open invitation on its Facebook page to invite budget restructuring and revenue ideas from the community at large. Ideas will be confidential, organized by Mike and Carol, and discussed on Friday. So then she said, to invite the community at large for budget and restricting ideas. I guess she wants you guys to announce that? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Fine job announcing it.
Yes, good job.
Okay.
So there's an open invitation on the Facebook, on the town Facebook page about this. And that can help as we have our discussion on the 13th. But I think for next week, our discussion will just be on the budgets as we know it now, or as we've been presented, and where things are shaping up for us to help us make our decisions as to what we would recommend.
Yeah.
All right. So we will have a meeting next Wednesday at 6 o'clock.
All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
See you next week.
Yep.